On March 8th, the internet started lighting up when news broke that a test screening of Deadpool 2 had not been received well by the test audience. On the contrary, it had been received poorly, sparking rumors of emergency reshoots. However, later reports claimed that the test screenings were fine and that the reported reshoots were already part of the plan. Here we have two very different narratives. So what is going on? That is what we're discussing here today. I am your narrator supreme, Rob Robot Shlomo, and with me, as always, is Tom Connors.
Hello.
And joining us is Andre.
Hey, everyone.
And we are going to be discussing here at Midnight's Edge the rumored reshoots of Deadpool 2 and the test screenings that have been causing turmoil. So, Tom, why don't you take us through a timeline of events?
Well, to this point, the only thing that is certain is that there was in fact a test screening and that they are indeed in the midst of reshoots as we speak. And the timeline goes as so. In January, there was a test screening announced, and this was then confirmed by all the things that are going to happen here, and we're going to break them down. Starting on March 8th, a gentleman by the name of Jeremy Conrad tweeted out that a source had claimed to him that Fox screened Deadpool 2 tonight, not Dark Phoenix again, and yikes. First reaction wasn't what I expected to hear. About a half hour longer than the first movie, no plot for a good chunk of it, Vanessa is wasted, credit scenes are the best part of the whole thing. Now this was March 8th. Andre, what's your reaction to these tweets from Jeremy Conrad?
And so it begins. How many times have we seen this before? And how many times has it ended well after this beginning?
90% of the time we hear this, and 90% of the time it doesn't turn out well.
Yeah, that's actually, this is not a good sign. We always have to take these stories with a grain of salt. And as always, test screenings, the test screening audiences are always a little bit, I don't want to say biased, but they're usually not your standard audience, but at the same time, like, oh boy, this is a huge red flag that's going up here.
Yeah, things like this always need to be taken with a grain of salt, but they should never be discounted completely. Also, the thing with test audiences is that, as you say, sometimes they can be a fickle bunch, and they can sometimes be plain wrong. Like, for instance, in the case of I Am Legend, where test audiences completely and utterly destroyed the ending of the movie because they thought it was too dark and depressing. Even though, when they changed it, after the whim of test audiences, they ended up destroying the movie. So let's hope that is not the case here. But yeah, I agree with you guys. Whenever this happens, it doesn't have to be the kiss of death, but it's certainly not a great sign.
Right. We don't generally like to react to the first reactions because they can either just be rumors or somebody who wasn't actually at the screening, which is the case with Conrad. He wasn't actually at the screening. This is a source that told him this. But the next day, on March 9th, something else happened that was very odd. Fox threatened Jeremy with a possible lawsuit over talking about Deadpool 2 and its reaction, and Jeremy shot back that he wasn't at the screening and had not signed any NDA. So guys, what's your reaction to this now?
Okay, that initial tweet, that was a red flag. Fox reacting like this is not a red flag. That's an admission that things are absolutely horrible and this is not at all what they want to get out. So they react and they overreact. If they want to bury a story, this is not the way to do it.
Yeah, sending the scary letter at this point is not a good sign that the story is untrue, for want of a better expression. It makes me believe that there is some truth to this, that there is more than a grain of truth to this, and they wouldn't be doing this unless there was something on the line, because right now Deadpool is probably the biggest moneymaker for Fox. The X-Men franchise is stagnating, and they're going to want to protect Deadpool. And this after a movie that they actually for years didn't want to make either. So I got to think that they're really sweating on this.
I think the key word that Andre used was overreact, because Fox, like you said, just basically confirmed that they didn't want this out there. And how many times have we heard, negative things, and the studios just let it slide? They don't say anything because generally they know it's just a bunch of bullshit. In this case, though, this does add legitimacy to that. So then the next day, a lot more claims come out on both sides. There was a few people, including Steve Weintraub, who claimed that the screening went fine. It got scores in the 90s. There was maybe one scene that people had an issue with, and that's probably where a lot of this was emerging from, and he didn't want to spoil it. Jeremy did actually explain some scenes and events in the film that upset some people. Now, I'm not going to get into all that right this moment, because I don't know if we really want to get into all that, but so he at least backed up his claims with some actual examples. Then at the same time, the same day, Josh Brolin, who's playing Cable, confirmed that they are in the midst of reshoots in Vancouver. This is starting to kind of look familiar, is it not, Andre?
Oh, absolutely. I get some Trancate flashbacks right here. More specifically, I'm thinking about this wonderful image of Leslie Nielsen in front of the exploding building saying, "Nothing to see here. Move along, folks." That's what this sounds like to me. The spin machine in full motion. Now, I just have to stress something really important here. I am not accusing Steve Weintraub of running Fox bidding or anything like that. What I think happened is that he obviously has connections in the studio, or in the studio they basically decided, okay, fine, this story is taking a life on its own. How do we squash this? How do we spin this? But yeah, that's neither here nor there. Point being, and I don't fully buy it.
Of course, Weintraub and everybody else are claiming sources, and we have our own sources here. We understand how that is. You don't want to give away the identity of the person who gave you this information, so there's no recourse against them. But somebody else who's also respected in the community came out and said this about the movie. I have, from my perspective, with what I've heard, they've made a huge Alien 3 blunder with the story. But I haven't seen it. Love the first film. This was a tweet from Robert Meyer Burnett when asked if he had heard if the test screening had really gone poorly or not. So this confirms news on the other side.
If Robert Meyer Burnett, if he says something's up, then I'm more inclined to think that something is up.
Andre?
As for me, I am more inclined to believe the negative. Always. For the simple reason that no one has anything to win by the negative story getting out. Like the competition isn't going to win anything from it, from the dates or anything like that. Disney isn't going to win, Marvel aren't going to win, Fox certainly aren't going to win. No one has anything to win by the negative news, whereas shitloads of people have someone to win by spinning it into a positive light. For that reason, if I have a negative scoop and I have a positive scoop, I tend to believe the negative one, and this is no exception.
So here we are with a lot in front of us. As we said from the start, really the only things we can really confirm at this point is that there was a test screening and that there are reshoots. Unfortunately, the rest we have to kind of take with a grain of salt both ways, as we've said here, and have to come to a conclusion and hope that by the time June rolls around that the movie comes together, because that's the other thing to really kind of look at here, and we have to. Word gets out that something's not working right, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of last-minute reshoots. What do you guys think about that whole thing?
Another thing I've noticed is we haven't seen another trailer yet, have we?
Right, we have not seen a real full solid trailer showing what this movie is actually about. And that was one thing that was pointed out with the back and forth.
And typically what happens is when you have a test screening, they pay attention to what the scenes that the audience reacts to. Whatever they react strongest to, that's what they put into the trailer. Doesn't sound like anybody has any strong reactions to this.
Andre?
Well, just reshoots happening by itself is not something I'm too worried about. Not even this close to release. Because that could be as simple as, okay, we need a little nip here and a little tuck there, and we have time for it, so let's do it. It can be as simple as that, but of course, if there's something more extensive, if they're trying to fix something this short before release, that's obviously not a good sign. Obviously, it would be a far worse sign if they knew they needed to fix something and they didn't do it. That's like the thing to keep in mind here, is that they're actually trying to fix things. And there are plenty examples of reshoots actually having made all the difference in the world. But still, it's not a great sign. What it says to me, though, first and foremost, is that this puts the whole original director Tim Miller leaving in a whole new light. Because now it would appear that could be story issues there as well, not just monetary issues, as we were led to believe. And maybe things wouldn't have gone down this way if Tim Miller had more influence. That, of course, is a hypothetical. We don't even know what the issues are, or the extent of them. But those are certainly thoughts that come to mind.
Yeah, it's ironic that you bring that up, because I was just going to say that this takes us way back to the beginning of this whole thing, when there was creative differences between Ryan Reynolds and director Tim Miller that forced him to leave the project. And it makes you question, was it the right decision at that moment to allow that to happen, or was there something that Tim Miller knew then that we're just starting to find out now. I mean, it could just be, like Andre said, though, too, it could just be these are standard reshoots. They just want to nip and tuck here and there. We're just panicking over nothing. But we don't know yet until we see the film, I guess.
If I were to hazard a guess, I think that Ryan Reynolds really knows Deadpool, and he's the expert of making sure that Deadpool is Deadpool in every single scene he's in. However, I am not equally certain that he can construct a movie from start to finish, and maybe director and storyteller Tim Miller might have a better grasp on that. And if the disagreement was something more story-wise, then there might be a problem here.
Rob, anything to add to that?
Not really. I mean, Andre actually brought up a really good point. I mean, this is all happening after Tim Miller was essentially pushed out of the project. I mean, really, you can't underestimate the impact a good director has on a film like this. And apart from Ryan Reynolds knowing everything about Deadpool, is it unfair to say Ryan Reynolds is probably one of the biggest Deadpool fanboys on the planet or going? I don't think it is. But at the same time, his enthusiasm for the character is not enough. You need somebody like a Tim Miller who is going to be able to say, you know, yeah, that's a good idea, but I don't think that will work. And it doesn't sound like they have that kind of voice right now.
Right, and then you run into problems like we had with, like, say, Batman v Superman, where you have a whole bunch of moments, but a story that isn't real cohesive. And maybe that's what we're getting here. Maybe we're getting a bunch of joke setups and payoffs, and I don't want to get into the scenes that were actually reported on, because I don't want to spoil that for anybody, and that's not what this is about. But all I can say is that's kind of what I'm getting from the vibe of the scenes they talked about, is that it's a lot of big set piece moments to just have big jokes, and they didn't all exactly land.
Basically, loads of scenes where Ryan Reynolds gets to excel as Deadpool, but without there being a surrounding story and a framework for the scenes to work within.
Right. Basically what we did have in the background of the first film, and really points to missing somebody like Tim Miller there, or maybe giving Ryan Reynolds too much leg room and not enough restriction when it comes to, yeah, that's funny and that's cool and that's out there and strange, but it still needs to make sense in the grander scheme of the film.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I mean, you really do need someone to sort of tie the whole thing together. It sounds kind of like a problem with another film, an MCU film, Iron Man 2, where you had just a bunch of plot threads, but really not a whole lot to tie together. Yeah, okay, yeah, you have all these cool moments, but they're not set in a context where it helps the story. And it's sounding like we have a situation like that here. Oh yeah, let's show Ryan Reynolds doing all this cool stuff as Deadpool, but there's no real reason why he's doing it. So
yeah, I think you have a similar situation here where you have too many cooks in the kitchen, as always, where you get too many producer notes, just like with Iron Man 2. And unfortunately, or fortunately, you have one of the producers being Ryan Reynolds himself. So yeah.
It's funny that you should mention Iron Man 2, because there is another movie that I am a little bit worried about, and it's an MCU movie. Care to guess which one?
It's got to be either Avengers or Ant-Man and Wasp, because those are the only two coming up.
No, actually, I am a little bit worried about Avengers Infinity War, with the recent change in release date. Now, I know that it can perfectly well be that the release date was shifted upwards 1 week to accommodate for the hefty competition of both Han Solo and Deadpool 2 in May. However, this shift in release date means that the movie now opens the same day in America and in Europe. In Europe, it was supposed to open towards the end of April anyway, because it has been a tried and true Marvel practice to open weeks 1 week earlier in Europe and the rest of the world, so as to drive up demand in the States when the excellent word of mouth gets out from the international release. What if the real reason they have moved the date up is they don't think there's going to be that good word of mouth?
I'm thinking something it might have to do with combating piracy. I think that is part of the problem.
I'm not sure I buy that, because they've been doing this for years, and the piracy problem in that sense is really freaking overrated.
Well, but at the same time, again, we're looking at a very crowded month of May, too. And I don't think there's been this many blockbusters lined up for the month of May in recent history, at least not to my memory.
I understand part of Andre's concern there, but I think I gotta kind of side with Rob on this one because to this point, basically Marvel knows it can just stampede over anything, especially after Black Panther and what it did. Frankly, I just feel it's more or less just to do with they think they're going to be able to open bigger and take advantage of the April crowd instead of waiting until May. It's been proven that they can open these movies earlier and earlier than the summer season and do just as well or better. I mean, look at what just Black Panther just did. I mean, that's all you got to really point to and say, look, because it's not even summer and that did summer numbers.
Yeah, I hope you're right, guys. I really hope you do. But we haven't heard anything from Avengers Infinity War. Like, we should soon start hearing some test screening results for that as well, about how amazing that movie is. That's the usual form for Marvel movies. We haven't heard anything like that at this point. Now, I don't want to be like a doomsayer. I could just be paranoid and base everything on nothing here. But for the record, I'm a little bit worried about Avengers Infinity War.
I think it does need to be said, though, that from the start, I don't think they've done the norm for Infinity War. They held off the trailer longer than they normally do, and they've been very secretive about a lot of things. There's even been reports that they filmed false scenes to even throw off the cast and crew as far as certain things that happened in the film. So it may be that they're just keeping it that much under wraps. So could be doom and gloom, could be nothing to worry about. Again, just like Deadpool 2, it's the same kind of thing here. But like you said, Andre, it does speak a little bit that we haven't heard much of anything yet. But who's to say we won't start hearing stuff in the next 2 weeks? You never know.
Exactly. We'll find out soon enough.
Well, I think that just about covers it. Tom, tell us where they can find you.
Well, you can always find me here at Midnight's Edge and Midnight's Edge After Dark, and you can find me on Twitter at Thomas Connors Jr. and lurking around the Facebook Midnight's Edge group quite often.
Andre, tell us where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at Andre Einharjar, and you can find me here on Midnight's Edge. Also, be sure to follow Midnight's Edge on Twitter, at Midnights_Edge.
And you can find me here at Midnight's Edge. You can also find me at the sister channel, Midnight's Edge After Dark. You can find me at my own Twitter account, at Robot Shlomo on Twitter. I'm the only Robot Shlomo on Twitter. You can also find me on my own YouTube channel, Robot Shlomo. You can find all kinds of reviews, videos, all kinds of fun stuff there. And if you enjoy the channel, you like what we do here at Midnight's Edge, and if you like what we do at the sister channel, Midnight's Edge After Dark, please consider supporting the channel through Patreon. Patreon supporters will receive all kinds of bonuses, news, information about upcoming videos, uncut audio for mini documentaries, behind the edge making of videos, exclusive bonuses, behind the scenes, bloopers, outtakes, all kinds of great stuff for us there. So once again, I am Mr. Rob Robot Shlomo.
I'm Tom Connors.
And I'm Andre, wishing you a good day.